On this episode, John Feldt from Blue Water Outlook joins us for an important Corn Belt weather update for planting season. It was Turk's birthday this week. Wish him a happy 70th birthday. Homeland Security has deemed agriculture as an essential industry, so this means we can keep shipping seed. Please do your part to practice social distancing and good hygiene. Stay healthy out there, folks.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman, and welcome to Cup of Joe, episode number 34, Season 2. Today we have our regulars, Tommy, Turk, and Ben, and also a special guest, John Feldt from Blue Water Outlook. If you're not familiar with John, you should be, because he is the weatherman, the official weatherman for Mershman Seeds, and you can link to him off our website and get daily briefings as well as his weekly briefing. Today we brought John in to specifically talk to us about, what the spring outlook is going to do. We're getting a lot of moisture right now. When's it going to dry up? And also what's going on with the rivers? What do we expect? So I'm going to turn this over to John. And John, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Joe. This time of year, there's always so much going on. I'm hoping your show's 4 hours long because I could probably talk that long with everything that's going on. I think it's going to be, some of my thoughts here, and if I run over, stop me here, but a lot to look at. But, sort of two areas of the Corn Belt. I think we're looking at the upper Midwest and then the eastern Corn Belt as two sections. And then, of course, Iowa, especially the southeast part of Iowa, sort of in the middle there. But, you can almost see that now. There was snow over Nebraska, parts of northwest Iowa, southern Minnesota, just in the last this week here. And some of it was somewhat significant. Now, that's not necessarily unusual for spring. But some of the things that I'm looking at when I look at my longer-term outlook is I'm looking at soil moisture. And right now we do have many spots that are wet, but most spots I would call adequate. And as you know, sort of that status of soil moisture right now, it can sort of be in the short term a problem, but in the long term a positive. And I sort of think that's how we're looking at it here. Now, most areas are in pretty good shape. Now, there are a couple areas with some excess soil moisture. We've had some areas of heavy rain over the past week, and as we know, spring is a time of the year when we're going to get a lot of extra rain in spots from time to time. The other factor that we know right now is in most areas, snow cover was less than normal. We had a milder winter in many spots. Now, the upper Midwest, that's where we've had a lot of snow, Minnesota, Wisconsin, parts of eastern Dakotas. So when I look at the outlook, a couple things I want to look at. I want to look at past trends, and I want to look at some climate modeling and also some of the observations I just mentioned. So one of the things that's very interesting, I talk a lot about this in my content, is sort of this cool pocket or cool hole. And, we've seen this now for a number of years, and it's pushing some cooler air into the upper Midwest, sort of hitting the Dakotas, Minnesota, Nebraska, parts of Iowa, occasionally a little bit further south. And it's given us this cool anomaly, both in winter and in the growing season. And what's so interesting about this to me is this isn't just a U.S. anomaly, this is a global anomaly. When most of the globe is warming, this is an area that's been cooler. So I don't see any reason why that would not continue again, and that's going to sort of foster this boundary between some occasional pushes of this cold air into the upper Midwest. And then the eastern Corn Belt looks like it's going to be more milder weather. So I think we're going to see a big split this growing season, especially the early part of the growing season from now into, say, through the rest of spring, between these contrasts in air masses. So what does that mean? Well, that means somewhere between these air masses, we're going to have a boundary. And when we have a gradient between these temperatures, that's where the action will be. So I am a little bit concerned about too much moisture, too much soil moisture in spots. I think the area of biggest concern, and I'm looking at number of models, would be the eastern Corn Belt primarily, generally from parts of Illinois, Indiana, perhaps Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee, extending into parts of Iowa and Missouri as well. So that looks to me like the area where there could be some delays due to early season planting and wet weather. But like I said, the overall picture, though, even though we're going to have some problems in spring with some wet spots, I don't think it'll be like last year. And I think overall, that's going to set the stage for some positive type conditions as we get through the middle part of the growing season because of the adequate soil moisture. So in the short term, in the spring, some problems here and there, particularly I think with wet weather conditions in the east and perhaps colder conditions than normal, delaying planting in the north. But overall, I think that's going to set the stage for a decent growing season.
That's positive. It's going to be better than last year, that's for sure. No question about it.
So, John, a lot of our listeners are very, very interested in what could be going on up and down the Missouri River, especially in western Iowa. It sounds like it's not all bad news.
Well, I've been covering that for quite some time now, and we've been watching this snowpack over the upper Midwest. And one of the things that we want is what I call a managed snowmelt. And what I mean by that is this time of year, when climatologically daytime highs get above freezing, we melt some of that snow during the day and it refreezes at night, and we don't get any additional significant rain or snow on top of that. The good news is that has been what has been occurring. We have had the axis of heaviest weather has been over the central and eastern Corn Belt, not so much over the far upper Midwest. So that's good. We've melted most of the snow now over southern Minnesota, much of Wisconsin. So we've got that water into the streams. Now, the vulnerability is going to be that soils are wet in this area and rivers now are running high. So we have to sort of watch that we don't get heavier rain on top of that. But the good news is, at least most of the models that I've looked at are showing that the heaviest precipitation is going to sort of stay out of that area. But still, because of that vulnerability, it does look like there is a chance for some significant flooding along the upper Mississippi, say just generally downstream to maybe Quincy or so, and then parts of the Missouri River as well. But I think what's important to say is there's no indication that this could be anywhere like last year. This is more our enhanced flood threat, but nothing like last year, which was exceptional. So I think that's important to say, but we still have this caution because we do have high stream flow. We have wet soils. We're just going to have to watch where the spring rains fall, but it does look like some areas of these rivers, not as extensive and not as high of river flow, but we still have to keep an eye on that.
John, you have experience in working with what do you call it, hydrology when you measure the river flows and whatnot. Is that not in your background, so you feel pretty comfortable when you talk about that?
Yeah, I do. My background with the National Weather Service is both in weather. I was the meteorologist in charge of Des Moines, Iowa office and the Iowa area manager for a while. So that was my agriculture and weather background. And I was also the hydrologist in charge of the Southeast River Forecast Center, and I office at forecast river level. So one of the things I do in my content is I sort of integrate both weather and water, and certainly on my hydrology days, that's why I talk so much about soil moisture, because that's a real key component of both agriculture, as you know, but also potential for river flooding. And then I also add in climate. I think climate's really important because a lot of times I'm talking my wife will say, "What's the forecast for the next day?" And I'll say, "I don't know." But I do know for the next weeks and months is where I'm usually looking at. And I'm just kidding. I usually know what the next day forecast is. But usually I'm looking out weeks and months ahead, because what I want to do for all my listeners, and I want to make sure that, the big trends that you see. So if I see a big trend of hotter or colder or wetter or drier, I want to make sure you are the first to know that so you can make decisions and plan for that.
If somebody wants to specifically ask you a question, you take emails, correct?
I do, and that's something I've always done. I really enjoy helping people with decisions. I try to be as specific as I can in my content, but I'm covering a very large area. So occasionally somebody will have a very specific question, and I always say you can email me at John, John, at bluewateroutlook.com, and I'd be glad to answer that question. I know people occasionally have some really big decisions to make as far as planting or harvesting. So if I'm not answering that specific enough in my content, I'd be glad to follow that up as well.
And you have a daily content that is, you can specifically put it to your zip code or your town, and then you do a weekly content meeting video broadcast on YouTube on every Saturday. So we have links to that on our website. You can sign up for John's information, and I really like your weekly recap, because you tell us why it happened this week and then what's going to happen next week, and it gives you, like you say, the trends. If it's going to be wetter, it's going to be drier, we know. And we basically run our business based on what you are predicting. So if we know it's going to be a wet week, we know we're going to have a hard time getting bulk seed out of the bin, so we got to plan accordingly. And if we know it's going to be a dry week, we can accelerate. So we do appreciate everything you do for agriculture in our business. And I know the farmers, once they get used to watching you and listening to you, they'll feel very, very comfortable. Plus, an email, it's like having your own personal weather forecaster on your team. And weather's such a big thing to farmers and can make or break them. So we appreciate everything you do.
Yeah, I think this week was a good example of, just an example of my content was last Saturday I put out my weekly video briefing, and I try to keep it, 5 to 7 minutes. I try to, keep it sort of so that, it sort of doesn't take up a whole lot of time, but gives you the information you want. On this week, during the week, I put out short issuances via email on river and snow update, that more rain and snow. I put another one out on an active day was expected on Thursday, was everything from snow to severe storms. So that was more of a specific content. And then yesterday I put out one on the outlook for April, May, and June. And I explained the science behind that, what was sort of driving that. And then this morning I put out something on the spring flood outlook. So I don't normally, I try to sort of keep it 2 or 3 per week. I don't want to inundate with too much content, but this was a good example of a week there was a whole lot going on, and I want to make sure that you get it right away.
We appreciate it, John. Any other questions for John?
No, I appreciate everything you do for it, John.
Appreciate it, John.
Very passionate, and it shows.
Thanks for calling in, John, and can't wait to hear your briefing on Saturday. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
That was fantastic information from
Absolutely.
John, and when it comes to weather, it affects everybody. Not only farmers, but folks in town too. So let's wrap this thing up with a few more comments from each of you. Ben, what do you have for us this week?
I'm supposed to be getting my traps set in. We signed up, this location for Mershman Seeds signed up with Iowa State University to be a true armyworm and black cutworm station, reporting station. So those traps are supposed to be in this afternoon. So I'm going to be building traps and getting those set in place to start taking moth counts April 1st. So that'll be right around the corner before we know it. So getting supplies and stuff ordered for plots, and it's keeping me pretty busy this week. So
Good. Things just keep going on, don't they, regardless of what's going on?
absolutely.
Turk, what's the news from you? Well, first of all, I see you got a big button on it that says Over the Hill. Well, your birthday was this past week, right?
Correct.
And what did you turn? Kind of a milestone. Anything with a 0 was a milestone. Now, was it 50? Or that was it? 50?
7.
57. All right.
Well, happy birthday. You look more like 50 than 70.
Yeah. So I came in to do this specifically. I've been working from home, but this is what I run into when I walked into my office, and over the hill and a whole bunch of other
Yeah, they had the
things.
big yellow signs that, usually that yellow sign you put on wet floors, caution it's wet, and it said caution old people.
Old age ahead.
Old age ahead, yeah, and then they put the black crepe paper. Well, that's what they do when you hit those zeros. So you can expect that around here.
So the next one will be 80 then? Is that how that's
80 will be the next one. You don't have to
Okay,
worry
all
till
right.
you're 80 now.
Okay. So the only thing I got to go that I want to talk about, Joe, is the Homeland Security did issue a statement that all of agriculture and everybody associated with agriculture that help farmers with food production and crop production and everything else will be a essential industry. So will everybody associated with helping farmers fertilizer, chemicals, seed will be able to continue to do their jobs to help farmers be able to put this crop in this spring.
That's a critical thing, because if this thing keeps getting worse, this coronavirus keeps getting worse,
it's going to.
We could see a national shutdown, and agriculture right now declared essential industry would be exempt from that shutdown. So farmers don't have to worry that there's not, we're kind of, seed's kind of like toilet paper, pretty essential,
Right.
to grow a crop. There's not going to be a shortage of seed. We're going to keep shipping.
The takeaway here is, because we are deemed an essential industry, it is very, very important that everybody practice very good hygiene, social distancing, and everything we can to make sure that we keep everybody that we're working with in this industry healthy. And so, please use all the necessary hygiene and sanitation issues, and keep away from people as best you can to do your job. So I think that's important, very important.
Yeah, we've instructed our truck drivers to exactly the same thing. And of course, if a farmer's in his tractor in the back 40 or 80, he's about as much social
Right.
distancing that he can possibly get.
Right.
So that's good. So that was a little positive. And then the last Thursday, Friday, the markets have kind of responded here. Everybody said this thing was going to be kind of a V. So I don't know if the lows are in, but we've definitely seen some positive change.
Yep, it looks like, again, we don't know where this thing's headed. If anybody has been working with markets for a long time, there is absolutely no for sure what tomorrow's going to bring. But again, look at the everything that we monitor and charts is a good thing to tell us. And I think we come real close to a all-time low that we set here a few years ago. So it looks like this could be a major double bottom if that is the case. So.
And they're getting a little drier down there in Brazil, and so their crop's not going to get any bigger. So, and it sounds like China came in and bought a little bit here on Friday. So things will change. We're just not going to stay like this all the time, and that's the neat thing about agriculture. We get depressed and we get down, and it's probably not going to get as good as what we hope, but it's definitely we just got to hang on.
Well, last week we talked about the cure for low markets is low markets,
Yep.
and so we are creating demand right now, and again, people will be buying this product. So.
Yeah, we filled up our gas tanks as best we can to help us get through spring. We can't buy enough diesel, but we can buy enough gas to keep going. So took advantage of that, and so I know some other farmers that did too. So that's a plus, and so things change around. But as soon as Saudi Arabia and Russia decide they're going to play together, they said oil price will go back to the 40s.
We could see a $10-15 jump in oil prices just like that.
Yeah, overnight. So just hang on. Tommy, you're working with the sales team, and of course this week we put them on a no travel, and then now we've basically backed up just a little bit. So tell us about that.
We had the salesmen. They've been doing their part of social distancing and staying home and trying to work from home as much as possible. They've been going over every order meticulously with every dealer, kind of line by line, making sure everything's good so our shipping department can run very efficiently. They've been having discussions as far as getting seed placed for in-season needs. So we're trying to make the best positive out of it as we can, and I think a lot of guys are very appreciative of us, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, making sure, and I know you are too, Joe, so our trucks run the most efficient, and basically getting every order perfected, make sure everything's right, and going over everything and also practicing good hygiene and social distancing by working from home as well. So
yeah, it's a
little stir crazy for having a salesman in a house all the time, but they're making the best of it.
I know they're just a phone call away or text or email, so we're not telling our salespeople to not work. We're just telling them to be conscious of this and not take the disease like this and spread it around in their rounds that they make as they call on people. And so I think we're doing the right thing, and I think most of agriculture is trying to do the right thing. So, but they're doing a lot of work, because right
Absolutely.
now, As we go down the home stretch in shipping, it is so critical that we have all the orders exactly the way the farmer wants them and we ship them correctly. We're on schedule. We expect to have all the seed delivered in time and prior to planting. And we have both plants producing at a high level coming in down the stretch. And we see no issues in not having enough seed and having it where it needs to be when planting time starts. So our customers can be reassured that they will get their seed, and we are working very hard to make sure that happens. And we beefed up our production this past year to be able to do higher quantities per hour, and then we've also increased our fleet of trucks so we can ship more per day. So I mean we've done everything to stay on schedule because I know farmers are not going to wait this year. No. If that ground is right, they're going to plant based on what they learned last year.
Yep.
So that kind of wraps up this week's episode. That gets us to the corny jokes. Now, one of the things, it might happen in your area a little bit earlier than this, and maybe a little bit later, but at night, particularly Thursday night, there was a lot of frogs out there and making lots of noise. You know what I'm saying? That's a sure sign of spring when you hear the frogs croaking, at night.
Jan opened the door last night and said, "Listen to that." And I'm going, "Yep."
So what do the old timers say when you hear the frogs for the first time? What do they say? They say that they'll look through ice 3 times before spring is actually officially here. So this weekend is supposed to be really, really cold, so that will be the first looking through ice. So 2 more hard freezes, and then boom, we're done. We're done. Spring's going to be here. So we got John working for us, and we got the frogs working for us. So that brought me to this corny joke. It said, why are frogs so happy? They were very happy, this week. Because they eat whatever bugs them. Okay? And then just for a bonus one, since why did the bike keep falling over? Why did the bike keep falling over? It was too tired.
Too tired, yeah.
Well, that'll get you to next week, hopefully. And as always, be safe. Hopefully you and your family are healthy and they stay healthy. And we'll get through this. We always do.
Yep.
And we appreciate your business and can't thank you enough for listening today and watching. And we'll see you next week. Take care.